assuming we're right to go, so we might open the meeting. No apologies to leave with absence. Any disclosures of interest, councillors? Righto, we'll move on to the first item, item 3.1, the procurement report, and I'll hand over to Mr. O'Byrne and Mr. Evans.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we have two items from a procurement panel. One is the tender for DRFA Events Construction Package number 2, and the second one is the contract extension for the provision of gatekeeping and recycling services, which was a layover from the last meeting. So I'll ask Mr. O'Byrne to speak to the DRFA Events Construction Package 2 item.
Thanks, Mr. Evans. Through yourself, Mr. Mayor. Look, it's pretty fair to say this is actually quite an exciting, significant step for council in relation to progressing the flood recovery works and the reconstruction of our roads and getting our roads back up to where they were pre-flood. This is to deliver a significant portion of the eastern roads associated with the REPA, or the reconstruction of essential public assets. We received 3 tender responses. One of those tender responses was deemed non-conforming and actually withdrew their tender at the end of the day. And so two tender responses were assessed, with Durack Civil being the lowest tenderer that was deemed by the council officers as the most acceptable tender brought to themselves for endorsement. The only point I will make, as you can see within the report, the evaluation panel, when they actually assessed the tenders, they did actually suggest that we actually go back out to tender, because the prices are high, but the high prices are simply reflected and accepted by QRA, if you like, as being the current market rate, with all the flood recovery works or disaster recovery works going around the country at the moment, not just the state, and also with the major highway works going through Gympie. So the evaluation panel's recommendation was considered by the procurement panel, and the procurement panel actually determined that the best mode to move forward was to accept the lowest tenderer, which is Durack Civil.
Thank you, Mr. O'Byrne. Just great to see another package rolling out. I know that the team have had some challenges around jumping through the hoops set by QRA, and we've had meetings with Jake Elwood about that. So this will be great for the eastern side to get some work done. What's the time frame of turning dirt if the recommendation is approved by council?
We'd be anticipating the contractor would commence work within 6 weeks. So there'd be mobilisation, etc., acceptance of the contract itself, but within 6 weeks, maybe earlier.
Any other questions, councillors? Councillor Walter.
Budgeting for this, can we have a bit of a breakdown? I've tried reading through to find out where the breakdown is in the budget, where the funds are coming from, the QRF and within our customers.
So council, being part of the overall DRFA works as far as flood recovery, it is absolutely majority funded by QRA, the disaster section of government. There's an element of what we call complementary works, which council can undertake at its own discretion as to whether they actually do some improvement works over and above the flood recovery works themselves. The extent of that is generally somewhere between, say, 5 to 10% of that value, but that determination will be made once we actually hit the ground and have those discussions with the council. But essentially, 95 to 98% funded by QRA.
Thank you.
Councillor Mel.
It was just along the similar lines. It just does say subject to confirmation of funding from QRA for these works, but is that looking favourable for just that confirmation? I mean, I know we have to get it confirmed, but that's not going to be a major hiccup foreseen at this stage.
No, councillor, at this stage not. What we're actually undertaking at the moment is what QRA term a market price reset, and that is actually due to be submitted to the federal government by June. But QRA have already essentially accepted the fact that the market price is the market price at the moment, and they've got a number of other councils and contracts in a similar vein to this. So at this stage, no, we don't foresee any.
For you, Mr Mayor, we deliberately went parallel with the QRA approval and procurement to try and expedite the processes as best we could.
Councillor Stewart.
Mr Mayor, firstly on the table, we've got this table that details what works. In one column is sum of DUR. What does that mean?
Sorry.
You've got, I'm just trying to work out what, you've got this table which lists all the work it's going to do, and then a column of figures. I'm wondering what the column of figures means.
Yeah.
So which table are you referring
About page
Sum of
44.
the DUR. That's the one? Yeah.
About page
On
40.
the evaluation report.
Yes.
Page 44.
Oh, that's the kilometres, isn't it?
Kilometres is normally KLMS.
Sure.
That's what I took it as.
I thought it was voice language, you know.
Numbers are doing beach, 30 or something like that.
Doesn't look like kilometres to me. It looks like, I don't know what it is.
Distance, or so I was trying to work it out myself. I thought it was money at first, but that didn't add up.
Give me an understanding what they're doing with it.
Duration
Oh,
was the word I came up with.
Could be.
summer duration.
I think it's actually referring to some of the defects. It's actually
Also how
some of
many
the extent of
kilometres?
the defects.
It did seem.
Councillor, if I can take
Defect under rectification?
if I can take that just on advisement and get
Okay.
back to you in relation to what that acronym means.
So this actually refers to mainly sealed roads on the eastern side of the river?
Well, it's a combination of sealed and unsealed, but it is a significant number of the sealed roads.
It's 125 roads.
Yeah, a lot of roads,
Grand.
yeah, I can see there's a lot of roads, okay.
So councillor, yeah, through yourself, Mr Mayor, look, a lot of patching work, a lot of remediation works associated with the sealing, but there is an element of unsealed as well.
Any other questions, councillors? Councillor Devereux?
In terms of what work has been done over the last, since all this damage happened, just to be clear, are we live streaming this at the moment? Okay, so what I would like is for the residents who watch to understand the process, because I think a lot of residents at the moment are pointing fingers and saying, council, the organisation isn't doing its job because the roads that they can see aren't being fixed. Now, we know that there's, we've been waiting on certain things to come through so that it's paid for and all the rest of it. And it's sort of been, well, could you explain the process so that residents understand what's going on?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, councillor. Through yourself, Mr Mayor. You're right, councillor. There has been an extensive period between when the floods occurred and we're now actually starting to have some significant repair work undertaken. We've had the package one, which was tendered just recently, and that's now underway, being undertaken by Brown's Contracting, and now this significant package of works. The process has involved thousands and thousands of elements of data that's had to be collected by council, including photographs, survey works, and actually pinpointing locations of damage, etc. That all then has to be submitted to QRA. QRA then actually goes through an assessment process, come back to us with queries, we then respond to those queries, etc. When you're talking about thousands and thousands of data points, there's significant correspondence between the two entities to finally get to a point where it's agreed that yes, that work is damaged, or that those roads are damaged, that the state and indeed the federal government, with the state acting on their behalf, accepted the fact that that is the extent and that is the cost. And then they say, yes, we tick that off, you're now good to go. From our perspective, those processes take many, many months. So we're now at the pointy end. So from a community perspective, what we are now going to see progressively is a rollout of a number of contracts. This is a significant contract, and we'll see us, in addition to rolling out contracts, on the ground you'll start to see roads being repaired and our whole infrastructure being taken back up to pre-flood condition.
Part of it too, I imagine, would be proving that it was actually caused by the rain events and wasn't there beforehand, yeah.
So council, that is actually part of the whole process in the submissions, that we actually have to have data which can validate the pre-flood condition, and then the data which actually says this is the extent of the damage. So then correlate the two.
And just to explain, so again, so that residents understand this, I believe that was brought about because there were councils, not our council specifically or necessarily or even at all, but there were councils that tried to take advantage of this sort of thing and add extra work. So they started to ask for more information about before and after and so forth, and made the process longer. Would that be correct to say?
So council, look, historically, the funding that was allocated was used by councils with not as much scrutiny put on the actual extent of works that were the damage compared to the cost.
Have you considered sitting on this side of the table? Very well, please.
That from the historical use of that money, the both federal and state governments have decided to put a lot more significant scrutiny on the correlation between the damage and the cost.
Wonderful. Thank you for explaining that. I'm sure it'll help.
And through you, Mr Mayor, effectively, council has now submitted all its claims in relation to the January, February and May events in terms of road damage.
It's just through yourself, Mr Mayor, as well, if I can just add a comment here as well from QRA's perspective. They've been extremely helpful, especially in the last few weeks. They've actually had senior officers that have been attending our region, sitting here in the chambers here, and working through with our council officers line by line certain aspects. So that has actually expedited the whole process and enabled a short circuiting of the timeline between submission and funding approval. So that's that's a thank you to QRA for extending that amount of effort.
That's wonderful. What portfolio does this come under?
What portfolio? Roads or transport?
Infrastructure.
What directorate?
No, portfolio from our point of view.
Yeah, transport.
No one knows.
I think just to follow on from Mr O'Byrne's comments around QRA, it has been good to sit down with them and look at options for the future. It won't affect how this process is rolled out, but it's good to have those conversations with them around streamlining the system, make it more appropriate, so that it can still have the scrutiny required for the state and federal governments, but allow council to get on with things. And I'm looking forward to those further conversations down the track to, as I said, it won't benefit us with these events, but it will benefit maybe ourselves and other councils, I think, in the future. So that is another positive that's come out of our interactions with QRA. Are there any other questions, councillors? Councillor Deborah?
I'd like to have a portfolio meeting at some point, because I think I'm on roads. So
Got one coming up, council.
So
coming up, yeah, we haven't had anything for all of this. So.
Smooth endeavour indeed.
It's been under.
Is there any questions in relation to the recommendation? Thank you, Mr O'Byrne.
Oh, yes.
Councillor Deborah?
I noticed Lawrence Street's being done. Around schools and stuff, is there some thought given to doing it in school holidays rather than while the kids are there and it's very busy?
I think that's a contractor matter. I don't think that's something we need to. I understand the concern.
It's a community matter. With respect.
It's a contractual matter that the staff can deal with in terms of the implementation of that contract. I don't think it's something we need to discuss here and get too deep into operational matters. Any other questions, council, in relation to recommendation 1? Recommendation 2, Mr Evans?
Through you, Mr Mayor, this is in relation to the item that was laid on the table at the last meeting, which I now believe councillors have been briefed on. So I'll take it as read because it was tabled last time and ask any questions.
We've had a pretty good discussion around this, council, just prior. So is there any further questions in relation to the recommendation? Okay. With that, we have recommendation 1 there before us. Is there someone to move? Councillor Fredman, Councillor Spurley second, Councillor Fredman to speak.
This is a milestone, Mr Mayor. It's a very, very big contract, 35 million. It's significantly above what I understand we estimated, but that reflects the market. Given most councils within Kooyup here are going to be going through the same process, we've got in relatively early. I think we're lucky to get any tender at all in some ways. So given that it's part of a program being funded outside of the ratepayer income stream, this is very, very good news. It's going to be quite some time to get through that amount of work, but by the same token, it's overdue, and it's good news that we've got to this milestone.
Councillor Smith.
Okay, Councillor Fredman's sentiments. It's a great step for council, finally getting some of these roads repaired back to where they should be, and it's a good news story for residents and council.
2 speakers for the recommendation. Any speakers against? Any other speakers for? Councillor Milne.
I would just like to echo both councillors. This is a big major contract, 35 million, is probably bigger than most of our capital works programs we can get out in a year, but it's the patience of the community to actually wait to have this contract come through. I'd like to thank them, thank all the staff for actually getting it done, getting it right and getting this package done. I have to say, yes, we probably have got in before a lot of other councils, so we are lucky to have it and get some stuff happening on the ground. So I think the community is going to be very happy with this one going through, and I'm very happy to support it.
Any other speakers for or against? Councillor Fredman to close.
I think, Mr Mayor, I'd just like to conclude that we've got an enormous responsibility to manage this contract. It's 35 million. We've got to have the staff and with consultant help to get the best value out of this, to avoid any legal issues. So in going ahead, it's not plain sailing for us. We've got to put the resources into managing it so that we get what we're paying for and the public are looked after as best possible during the construction process.
With that, we'll go to vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. We have recommendation 2 there before us. Is there someone to move? Councillor Milne, someone to second. Councillor Smoot and Councillor Milne to speak.
This is a service that we need to have provided for us because we do need a gatekeeper and a recycler at our waste management facilities. I do believe that the next year will be well invested by council to look at our options moving forward. Waste is a major service that council has to provide, and so I don't see any issues having another year on this contract extension, and I'm happy to move this forward.
Councillor Smoot.
Yes, it is a service we provide. It's a major service we provide. I think may have been able to go about it a little bit differently, but anyway, it is what it is, and we'll try and work something out in the next 12 months as to where we go from there. Thank you.
2 speakers for the recommendation. Any speakers against? Councillor Jensen.
When we set our corporate plan, we said we wanted value for money, and I just failed to see how spending ratepayers' money on equipment and then spending ratepayers' money on contractors so that they can make a lot of money is good business sense. I know that we're too late at the moment to look at taking it in-house where we could actually try and make some money for a change. And I'm disappointed that we're here, and we've got another year now to think about it.
Any other speakers for or against? Councillor Stewart?
Mr Mayor, I support this, and I'm, maybe it's a pity it didn't happen end of last year, but I'm very glad that staff will be working on providing an assessment and good options paper, hopefully thorough options paper for how to go forward into the future. And so I certainly look forward to, before the end of the year, seeing what options are available for us to go into the future, whether we go in-house or go in with contractors. Hopefully we'll be able to do so with good knowledge. So I'm happy to support this motion, knowing that we will have that thorough assessment.
Any other speakers for or against? Councillor Milner, closed.
Referring back to the corporate plan, we do have empathy in our corporate plan. I do empathise with staff that they've been quite busy with our waste department, and resources and capacity have been quite limited. So yes, while we ideally would have liked to have some options looked at earlier, I do believe that this is not possible, and so I'm very supportive of moving forward for this next year for them to be able to do that. So I'm happy and encourage everyone to vote for this motion.
With that, we'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Councillor Stewart, Councillor Baldock, Councillor Smirk, Councillor Hartwig, Councillor Fredman, Councillor Mill. Against? Councillor Devereux, Councillor Benson. Motion's carried. Thank you. Move on to item 3.2, the Gympie District Historical Society donation. I'll hand over to Mr. Lewis.
Through Mr Mayor, the Gympie Historical Society trading as the Gympie District Historical and Gold Mining Museum was registered as a charity on the 3rd of December 2012. The museum was heavily impacted by the flooding events in 2022 and is seeking council's help in the form of a donation to rectify some of its artefacts. The building facilities on site are the responsibility of council and will be addressed through council's facilities team. The society or the museum receives a $10,000 annual contribution to support its operations, and recently council has paid $5,800 for a roof restoration that the museum undertook at its own cost. So basically the museum has an ageing profile with many of its volunteers in their late 70s, early 80s, and is struggling to rectify the artefacts that were damaged through the floods, and council has been asked to provide a small donation to facilitate the restoration of those works or those facilities.
Any questions, councillors? Councillor Stewart?
Mr Mayor, has the Historical Society indicated how they'll expend that money, whether they're going to use contractors or advice, or have they provided any sort of like quotes for work?
No, they haven't. They've just asked for a small donation. I think the quantum of works far exceeds $20,000.
I think part of the desire from the society was to offset the work of the volunteers, particularly around the cleaning and the sanitisation of the facilities and the artefacts. To have contractors come in to do that, and I'm very confident, as Mr Lewis pointed out, that the amount of work that needs to be done there is well and truly above the 20 grand mark.
I think, through Mr Mayor, one of the issues with this the museum has is its volunteering base, as I said, is in its late 70s, early 80s, and people are struggling to do that repetitive type work, cleaning and sanitising. So the museum, I would believe, would be bringing in external parties to help in that process.
Any other questions, councillors? Councillor Middle?
So, Mr Mayor, seeing this has come to a special meeting, when was this request actually made to have this additional money? How was it?
Very recently. So there was a discussion had some time back, and it didn't progress, and it was raised again just recently, so as part of the special meeting to expedite the process. Any other questions, councillors?
Mr
Councillor
Mayor,
Miller?
Because it says next formal review of our budget, so we're going to have to find 20,000 in the budget, or
Yes, we'll, through you, Mr Mayor, we'll absorb the 20,000 out of our next budget review. We'll offset that with alternative savings.
Any other questions, councillors? Have a recommendation there before us. Is there someone to move? Councillor Fredman, someone to second. Councillor Waldock, Councillor Fredman to speak.
Having been recently to another town called Canberra, and having visited an artefact restoration shop in Canberra, and having learned that Lismore Council have also had some problems with flood damage to artefacts, and that the repair bill that they're looking at is in excess, this is just for artefacts, is in excess of $100,000. I think this is very, very cheap. I hope it goes a long way, but we could be spending a whole lot more, given that we probably experienced at least as bad a flooding as Lismore did. But this is a small step to preserving something that, in my opinion, needs to be preserved forever, which is our history.
Councillor Waldock.
Thank you, Councillor Fredman, you stole my thunder. This is the history of the town. This would be money well spent. As Councillor Fredman said, it could be a hell of a lot more if we did it in-house, and good to see it going to not-for-profit, and yeah.
2 speakers for the recommendation. Any speakers against? The other speakers for. Councillor Fredman to close.
I think despite all the challenges in the world at the moment, especially in Gympie, post-flood, post-COVID, it's essential that we hang on to the things that need to be hung on to forever, and this is a small step in that regard. I would like to think that at some stage a future council looks at actually housing some of this material in a place which is not vulnerable to floods, but that's another debate for another day.
With that, we'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. That concludes our special meeting today. Thank you for your attendance.
Can I just ask, when I'm having a look at the roads on this SGQ and comparing them to the roads on the one that they don't match up, the roads? Is there a reason for that? Like,
I'm not sure,
I don't know.
Mr. Abate, can we get back